Welcome aboard Imagination Skyway, your guided tour through the worlds of Disney and Imagineering. I'm Matthew Krull, your host on this panoramic journey, and I'm on a mission to better understand the stories and places we love and the people who bring them to life. In today's episode, we explore the cultures represented at Walt Disney World, from the bustling streets of Harambe to the colorful gardens of the France Pavilion. Walt Disney World offers guests the chance to experience and learn about other parts of the globe. While our discussion isn't collectively exhaustive, we discuss some of our favorite examples of the ways in which the Imagineers transport us to global destinations without leaving Central Florida. You might be surprised by some of the answers we share. As you fasten your seatbelt, I encourage you to take out your mobile devices and search for Imagination Skyway on your favorite social media app. Better yet, if you're looking for ad-free episodes, bonus content, or the ability to comment directly on the podcast, head to patreon.com/imaginationskyway, where you can sign up for a free account or a premium subscription. And if this episode leaves you yearning for a trip to Disney or any other destination, reach out to our partners and sponsors at KMV Travel by visiting kmvtravel.com/skyway. As we begin our journey, please remain seated, keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times, and enjoy your journey aboard Imagination Skyway. Going to Walt Disney World, that last word, world, while it is a world in and of itself, also in some ways implies that there are cultural worlds that we can explore when we go to Walt Disney World. Maybe that's not implicit when you think about Walt Disney World, but there are a lot of cultures represented, whether that's the obvious World Showcase or beyond that. There are plenty of examples of places where cultures from around the world are present and represented in the Disney parks in really interesting ways. And to have this discussion, I wanted to bring onto the show two guests who, one has been on the show before, one has not yet, but both I work with a lot over at WDW Magazine. I always start with repeat guest first. So Tim, I want to first welcome you back to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. We chat, I think, weekly between articles and ideas for future articles and just general Disney content to geek out about. So always great to have you on the show.
I always love geeking out with you too.
Yeah, absolutely. And a new guest on the show who is also not just a contributor to WDW Magazine, but also has her own podcast, has her own book, and is just a wealth of knowledge and always challenging me with my articles as well, is Kathy. So welcome, Kathy, to the show as well.
Gosh, thanks for having me. I'm a big fan.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of your work as well.
Aww.
And we are definitely going to geek out about, or maybe discuss in at least discuss in detail some of the cultures that are present at Walt Disney World, the obvious and maybe the not so obvious. Before we do that, I like to start these conversations with rapid fire questions, which maybe are not going to be so rapid fire because these are different than the typical Disney questions that you might get asked. I wasn't going to go with your favorite World Showcase Pavilion or anything like that. So these are, believe it or not, all questions that have nothing to do with Disney, but a lot to do with the topic at hand. So I'm going to start with the first question, and I'm going to go with Tim first, just because you are a repeat guest, and I'm going to throw you to the lion's den first. Besides Disney, if you could travel anywhere in the world right now, where would you go?
That is a great question. I'm actually currently planning a trip to Norway. So that's an easy answer. But I would say the best place, my favorite place that I have visited was Ireland and Scotland. I know they're two distinct countries, but I spent about 3 weeks there and hiking in the Highlands of Scotland specifically. I'm a big hiker, do a lot of hiking and kayaking. So anywhere I can be out in nature, but the Highlands were beautiful.
That sounds wonderful. I have yet to go to either of those countries, and either of those three countries, any of those three countries, and Ireland and Scotland, especially hiking up in Scotland, sounds magnificent. Kathy, how about you? If you could go anywhere in the world right now?
Right now, if politics and all that were not an issue, I would tell you that I would probably want to go to a tropical beach in Africa. I am interested in Mozambique. Not so much interested in South Africa, Tanzania, any of those places. And then from there, I would not be content. I would want to go into sub-Saharan Africa. So Africa's huge. It would be a multi-month trip. Again, politics, money, and time constraints are not an issue. I want to go places where there is no internet.
Those sound like wonderful places to go. Some of those might be represented in certain parts of Disney too. So there's a little taste of that we can get, although not quite the same, of course, as going to those real places. And I'm hoping that you can make it there. All those constraints, um, either I don't want to say vanishing, but those constraints aside, hopefully you'll get the chance to go there. For me, we are planning a trip to Paris actually in hopefully 2027. I'm going to try to get there maybe sooner if we can. So that's like Tim's answer, something that's on our list. But one place I've never been, but I'm a history buff both at Disney and world history, and one place that is filled with history and has my wife's heritage and my daughter's heritage. None of my heritage though is is Italy, and in particular, I've never been to Rome, and it's very high on my list. Just knowing the history that's there, and so a lot of the cultural aspects of it. So, and then that heritage tied to my wife's side of the family. So I'm very eager to go to Rome sometime in the not so distant future if we can get there. Number two, I'll switch this up. I'll go to Kathy first, and then Tim. What is your favorite non-American cuisine?
Oh, you can't make me choose one.
You could
I
give a cheat answer, give like three, four, or five if you need to. But
Okay. I'm Italian, and that almost feels like American cuisine to me. I've eaten it so much. But there's some wonderful African food, and that's such a broad thing. I feel like it's not fair to say. Specifically, spoon bread, some of the maybe Ethiopian cuisine is delightful when it's done right. I know of one place in Orlando that does it right, and that's it. Other than, I assume, Ethiopia, to where I've never been. And then I'm also a huge fan of essentially any Asian food, any Eastern Asian, well, just Asian food, Indian. I like all food. That's not a fair question. I mean, if you put a sushi roll and curry and Ethiopian food down in front of me, I couldn't pick. I would be paralyzed with indecision and I would have to eat it all.
yeah, it's very hard to pick, I'll admit. Tim, do you have any leanings,
Yeah,
preferences?
well, I think Kathy covered the entire globe, but I will.
I did
Um,
not mention Norwegian cuisine. I want to be
That's
very
right.
clear on that.
I would
Irish, Scottish.
say Indian or Nepali cuisine. We have a Nepali place here in Cincinnati that is quite good. I have no idea how accurate it is though, so I would love to actually go to Nepal and try food there. But in the meantime, the food here in Cincinnati is quite good.
That's a great answer too. Very hard, I admit, to pick an answer, and I agree with Kathy. I feel like, especially being in New York, Italian is essentially an extension of American food at this
Doesn't
point.
even
Being here,
count.
it's just yeah, between the pizza places, the which is more American than Italian anyway. But there's it doesn't feel like a true non-American cuisine. But one that I will say that neither of you mentioned and is on my list. I wouldn't say it's the number one, but one I will often crave is German food, and it's really a better cuisine. I think for the colder months, you're getting a lot more of those hearty, meaty, stewy dishes. But it's hard to go wrong with a potato pancake, a sauerbraten, or a um,
Schnitzel?
schnitzel, or yeah, it's there's or even just a pretzel, right? Like there's it's hard to go wrong with some good German food. So
I spent a month in Germany and Austria last year, and the year before a month in Italy, and it was a lot easier to find what felt like truly authentic German food. There actually was a lot of Italian food in Germany too, as there's quite an influence there.
yeah,
But Italy is just so over touristed that it's hard to find truly good food. You have to go really far off the beaten path. So I thought the German food was quite better than the food in Italy, and I know that is probably not a popular answer, but it was very good.
Yeah, I'm gonna plug real quick here. I watched the first 3 episodes of Tucci in Italy, the Nat Geo Disney Plus show, and it really makes me want to go to get some of that Italian. He goes really off the beaten path and finds some very interesting, eclectic. You wouldn't even think of as traditional Italian food, breaking down all the different regions of Italy and their cultural influences. And the northern part, ironically, there is a large share of Austrian and German cuisine because of the uh, depending on when in history you're looking, it was Austrian or German or Austrian Hungarian. You know, it was it's very interesting to hear all the different regions and how their
Yeah.
cuisine is impacted by the cultures. So very, very interesting. Last question. This one is a little more, you don't have to think too much about opinions because it's a little more factual. But just for the sake of, we're talking about cultures. I'm curious about your own lineages and family heritage or culture. Kathy, we heard a little bit of Italian. Are you 100% Italian, or is there anything else in there?
I am better than 75% Italian.
Okay.
And there's been some confusion, we'll say it that way. Sometimes there's family mythology that gets told throughout the years. So I had my DNA done, and it came back that yes, I am mostly Italian, and then several different parts of Italy that we're from, which we knew. And then the rest was, I'm like 10% England and Northwestern Europe, 9% Germanic, 9% Scottish, and 4% Spain. I feel none of that. Um,
I think a lot of it is that family heritage and the traditions that are passed down really have an impact on how you feel about your own background and heritage. So I totally get that. Tim, how about you?
Yeah, apologies in advance to any family members listening to this because we also have a mythology that we are part Native American. I've been told what tribe I am. I did a DNA test, none whatsoever. But we are almost entirely German and English. Very, I guess, Irish specifically too. So very, very Northern European. Some Nordic countries mixed in there too.
Yeah, I haven't done any ancestry or DNA tests, so I'm going completely by family mythology and heritage here. But the stories that I'm told, I have a long list on my mother's side. My dad's side is almost exclusively Polish, or at least that's what I have been told. My mom's side is primarily German, but there's a little bit of French in there as well. So right on the border of East and West Europe. But yeah, very, very Central European countries. So anyway, I figured that would be a fun place for us to start. And this was a really fun topic to research, and it felt in many ways, to be honest, like I was prepping for a WDW magazine article because there is a lot of detail that goes into the Imagineering of various parts of Walt Disney World, whether they be attractions or lands or pavilions or restaurants or resorts or anything that might have a cultural impact. As time goes on, I think Disney has continued to lean in a little heavier into that bridge between the attraction or the place that we're visiting and the real world place that inspired it. And so we're going to go roundtable discussion. We'll one at a time identify one of the, we'll call it, locations that we had listed as having a cultural reference to someplace else around the world. And I'm curious to hear what you came up with. And we'll go around several times until we feel like we've have a pretty solid list here. I'm actually going to go with Kathy first this time. I'm going to give my first time guest the total opportunity to pick anything at Walt Disney World. So, Kathy, you can go in any order you want, but what's one location, pavilion, resort, whatever you want to go with, that is based on another place in the world that you want to discuss?
well, I just wrote about it. So it's fresh in my mind, but at Animal Kingdom, the Maharaj Jungle Trek, I did a deep dive for WDW Magazine about the murals of the four Maharajas, which are by the tiger exhibit. If you've been through there recently, there's a crowd hoping to see the little meatball. But what, to me, forgive me, Basco, is cuter than that, or more, not cuter, more striking than that, are the four Maharajas. And when Animal Kingdom opened in the 90s, it had a little bit more storytelling to it, if you can imagine that. And those stories don't necessarily get told, but if you find a cast member who knows the stories of the murals, which I did, I went back a few times and found different cast members to talk to. It's really amazing the layering that the Imagineers put into creating the Jungle Trek, because it is not only those four murals that you see by the tiger exhibit, but there are references to things those murals evoke outside of the Bat House. It's really this whole storyline about conservation in that part of the world, and why it matters. And I think one of the more enthusiastic cast members I talked to asked me, she said, "Do you know why the tigers are in what look like ruins?" And I said, "Well, other than it looks cool, no, I don't." She says, "Because if endangered animals take over the ruins of a place, it's harder to redevelop that place and tear them down than if they're just in a wild, undeveloped area." And I think that level of detail and storytelling, that environmental proselytizing, it feels like it's on every corner now, but in the mid 90s, not so much. And Disney was very subtle with it, and it's still a very powerful narrative. Um, they didn't know, we didn't use the word Anthropocene in the 90s, but that's what they're talking about with that. So that's what's fresh in my mind. And I'm going to just, spoiler alert, we're going to talk mostly about Animal Kingdom when you ask me questions today, just so you know.
Animal Kingdom has the richest ties to the places it represents. And I know bits and pieces of Maharaja Jungle Trek, but I'm now very excited to read your article, because I have not spent as much time focusing on the story. And as you're telling it, it makes a lot of sense. The message they're trying to share through that exhibit and its ties, and it feels like in some ways going to a real site and learning about the history of the place. So that's really cool, and I agree. I tried not to go too heavy on Animal Kingdom, but it's hard not to
Too
with
late.
that park. Yeah.
I'm here.
Tim, I'll bring it over to you next. Where do you want to go?
Well, don't you worry. I'll keep us rooted in World Showcase largely. So there's a few countries I'd love to dive into, but there's actually a time at World Showcase that I'd really like to talk about, and that's during the holidays. I would much rather spend a day walking World Showcase for Festival of the Holidays than go to Very Merry Christmas Party, and I love Very Merry Christmas Party, but I just think it is so cool to walk around. I grew up in a Christian household, so I know all the Christian traditions around Christmas. I also know all of the American secular traditions. We got Santa and Frosty, Rudolph and the Grinch. But going around to each country and hearing not just about how some of them celebrate Christmas, but other winter holidays, is just really rewarding. So, like, if you go to Mexico, Mariachi Cobre, they're playing music, but they're also talking about Las Posadas, which is the Mexican tradition that honors Mary and Joseph's trip to Bethlehem. And then next door at Norway, there's the story of Barn Santa and like a Christmas gnome. So it's just the juxtaposition of the very Christian story and the fun secular story in Norway is quite fun. Then you go to China and it's completely different. They're celebrating Lunar New Year, and there's just this really beautiful lion dance that you can watch. And it's throughout the day they do these performances, um, but each pavilion just has such a cool experience. In Japan, there's the Daruma doll vendor. So you learn Japan, they really focus on the New Year tradition. That's like what their big winter holiday is. And they have this tradition of they will make a wish on New Year's, and they will paint in the left eye, I think, or one of the eyes. of a doll. And when their wish comes true that year, they paint in the right eye. So there's a Daruma doll vendor trying to sell you dolls as part of her shtick. But in doing that, she teaches you about these Japanese traditions. And then there's, Zachary who teaches you about Hanukkah when the Maccabees revolted against their oppressors. And I think I'm trying to remember where that one is. I think he hangs out between France and Morocco. Um, but yeah, there's so many fun storytellers that are beyond just Santa at the Odyssey or Disney Springs. So there's just all kinds of ways to experience these different holidays. I just think that's such a cool experience. So you can walk around World Showcase trying to drink or try snacks, but there's also a lot of really cool programming for each of the festivals to learn more about those cultures. And I think that's so fun.
Can I,
I love the seasonal
are,
tie. Go ahead, Tathy. Yeah, yeah.
are we allowed to interrupt each
Yeah,
other?
please go for it.
I love how I do want to say that I love how if you go to Epcot and you have a largely Euro-Christian view of the holidays, how it really drives home that there's something special about the time surrounding the solstice, that you don't need to be a Judeo-Christian faith uh, to have a celebration. And it drives home, which I think was the initial idea behind Epcot, that, we have more in common than we do, kind of the whole it's a small world thing. I really like that part.
Yeah, I do too. And I like the fact that, to your point, Tim, you can go during such a specific time of the year and get a very specific set of lessons out of it. You're not going to learn about these, winter solstice elements or winter solstice celebrations any other time of the year. And it does extend, speaking of winter solstice, to Animal Kingdom, because they also, I wrote an article about that, how Animal Kingdom has its own version of celebrating the holidays and the places that those are represented. And I think even in Discovery Island, there's a broader celebration of the winter solstice itself, a very secular approach to celebrating that time of the year, and in a very artistic way that it can only be done at Animal Kingdom. So I think that's a really interesting point to start us, and both of you have raised the bar significantly. So I now need to go back to my list and see where I want to start, because I thought about this a little bit more traditionally, but I'm going to bring us, believe it or not, outside the parks, and I'm going to bring a tie into Walt Disney himself. So Walt has a few different elements of his heritage, but a major one is Irish. And even the Walt Disney Family Museum website has more information about Walt's heritage. His great-grandfather, Arundel Elias Disney, emigrated from Ireland to North America with his family in 1834. And then Keppel, who was Walt's grandfather, married an Irish-born immigrant, Mary Richardson, and then their eldest son was Elias, who became Walt's father. So there is on both sides of Elias's family, Walt's grandfathers or grandfather and grandmother both had this Irish heritage. And I was thinking about places that you can experience Irish heritage, and the one place that really stuck out in my head more than anything else is Raglan Road at Disney Springs. And it's such a specific place, of course. We're not talking about a land or an attraction. It's a place that, if you're looking to go on St. Patrick's Day, it's probably going to be tough for you to get a reservation there. It's going to be very, very busy. But any other time of the year, I always enjoy going to Raglan Road. And it's really tying directly back to some distinct Irish cultural heritage, which is really a cool aspect of it. So according to their website, which has a lot, I was doing a little bit of a deep dive on Raglan Road, more so than ever before. So the restaurant is named after a famous street in Dublin, which is, as the website describes it, a beautifully leafy, elegantly quiet road lined with magnificent Georgian houses. But what made it famous is a day when in the Bailey pub in Dublin, a group of musicians and poets were playing, singing, and reciting, and among them was one of they're calling Ireland's greatest poets, Patrick Kavanagh, who has a statue outside of the pub. And one of the finest singers, Luke Kelly, and they say the rest is history. We're glad to have a small part to play in bringing the work of these two great men to the wider world. The owners of Raglan Road have actually built pubs all over the world. And there is this focus on an extraordinary Irish experience, combining the attitude and the warmth and the friendliness of Irish culture. And it, of course, features some incredible food. I love the food at Raglan Road. You're going to get some very traditional Irish dishes, as well as some interesting different options that you can get. And the other aspect of it that makes it really worth going to is, of course, the musical side of it. So you can enjoy Irish singing and dancing. Of course, there's that, as I said, that statue that's outside of Raglan Road that is paying tribute to Patrick Kavanagh, that Irish poet. Even going as far as the logo is based on the three interlocking spirals of the Triskel, an ancient symbol first used at the entrance to Newgrange Neolithic tomb in County Meath, which is built in 3200 BC, which is over 5,000 years ago. And it's all just one restaurant in Disney Springs, and is of course operated by a third party, but still is a place that you can go to on Disney property at Walt Disney World. And it makes you, every time I go there, to Tim's point of loving to go to Ireland, it makes me want to go to Ireland and experience that culture firsthand. But it's a cool place that you can experience in Disney that does have this strong connection back to the place that it celebrates. So worth going to Disney Springs for that reason, and getting a little taste of Walt's heritage in the process. So
In your research, did you come across, I you have to fact check me, but I believe that the pub was actually built in Ireland and then shipped over to Disney. I'm gonna have to fact check myself, but
I did not see that one. Admittedly, I didn't go very deep into the rabbit hole, but that'll be really cool if that is true. So
yeah,
you can, it is
yeah,
okay.
built in Ireland, shipped overseas before being rebuilt. Yep.
That's amazing. Okay, so that's even more even more authentic. That's pretty cool. So yeah, if again, Irish heritage probably the best place, or Irish culture probably the best place I think to experience that at Walt Disney World specifically is at the Raglan Road restaurant, or Cooks of Dublin, another great place if you're looking for more of that quick service side to enjoy. I'm going to go switch things up. We're going to go reverse order now. So, Tim, I'm going to take it back to you before heading back to Kathy on your next choice.
All right. I will get out of World Showcase. So let's. This is actually so our June issue of the magazine is about this topic. It's about cultures of the world represented at Walt Disney World. So one of the articles by our content operations manager at the magazine, Heather, she researched all of the different cultures that are represented within It's a Small World. And so, you go through several different continents or regions of the world while you're on this ship. I have not been on it. I've been on Disneyland's more recently, but I got enough of it as a kid. But it was cool to revisit it through her article and realize it's more than just dolls singing a song that will be stuck in your head the rest of the day. So I wrote down some of the examples because I would not have remembered these. Um, so there's in the Norway area, the dolls are wearing traditional Norwegian headwear called the Scout. It's a folded and starched cap. And so I thought this, and then the other examples I'll talk through just show, the Imagineers' attention to detail, even when it comes down to costuming for little 2-foot dolls. It was just so cool, the research they've done. So in the Bali section, some of the dolls are wearing traditional matrimonial attire, which include these golden crowns. So on real people, not dolls, they would be 15 inches tall and weigh 8 pounds, and you'd wear those around on your wedding day.
Wow.
There's a trio of musicians who represent different parts of Africa. I will say Africa is a little underrepresented in Small World, but one is playing a kundi, which is an African harp, common in sub-Saharan Africa. Another's playing a reed pipe from the West African savanna, and then the third's playing a djembe drum, which is from West Africa. But I think one of the coolest facts I learned from this is it's not just all dolls without identities. There are a few historical figures represented in there. There's also like Don Quixote from the book of the same name, which takes place in Spain. But there's also Cleopatra from Egypt is represented on there. And then the Hawaiian king, I did not write down his name, but the king who united the Hawaiian Islands in the 1800s is represented there. So I just think it's cool the historical representation there, and just all these different representations of different parts of the world. But the one that really blew my mind is I do remember being confused why there were two different sets of hula dancers dancing at different speeds. But there's in the South Pacific area, there's one set of hula dancers dancing a traditional hula, and then there's another set of dancers, and if you remember, they're doing like a more rapid hip shake. And that is actually a traditional Tahitian dance called the otea. So just that, like, even the animatronics are able to emulate these subtle differences in dances from different cultures. I thought was just really, really fascinating.
Had no idea. By the way, I'm pretty sure the king is King Kamehameha because there's also the
I was gonna say, I think that's
Thank
what you're
you.
talking about.
Thank you.
yeah, there's also the Kamehameha suite and club level that you can enjoy at Polynesian. I did a quick fact check. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's who it was, and it's King Kamehameha. One thing that fascinates me about It's a Small World, by the way, is that the original version for the 1964 World's Fair, from the pitch to its opening was 14 months. So you think about how quickly they had to develop the concepts and design it and build it. That happened in a span of 14 months. Just amazing how quickly they had to move for that fair. And obviously how things have changed. But obviously there's a lot of safety and all kinds of things that have been added into the process relative to then. But it was a really, really interesting answer.
Wasn't there also kind of a, was that the one? Because I know there were, what, three different attractions at that World's Fair, and wasn't there one that Walt kind of said last minute, "Oh yeah, we can do that," and I can't
I'm
remember
sure.
which one it was. Yeah, it makes me feel like he was a great visionary, but I would have hated working for him.
Yeah,
I would be like, "You want it when?"
There were four. Yeah.
Four. There's
Yeah.
Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, Carousel of Progress, Small World.
And the
Ford's
Magic
Magic
Skyway.
Oh,
Skyway.
the Skyway, Tomorrowland Transit Authority. I
Mm-hmm.
fail. I forgot. Sorry.
So
There's a
that
ton of
attraction
Disney history.
that attraction didn't make it to the parks in that form, but I think like the dinosaurs from it are on
Yeah.
the train in Disneyland, and there's elements of that attraction that did make it in, but it didn't make it in its actual form from World's Fair.
Yeah. Total tangent, by the way, but I don't know about the two of you, but the more Disney history I study, the more I realize I know nothing about Disney history because there's so much to know. It's that becoming an expert in something, you just realize that you're never going to become a true expert because there's so much to know. All right, let's bring it back to Kathy. Are you going to stick with Animal Kingdom because you said you have several there?
No,
Do you want
if
to jump
Tim's
somewhere
not
else?
gonna stick with World Showcase, I'm not gonna stick with Animal Kingdom. I'm not gonna let him show me up. And in reality, this one's gonna be a little bit closer to home, literally for me, and that's gonna be Disney Springs and some nods to actual Florida. Now, obviously, Disney Springs are not real springs. I feel like we need to say that because I've sat there and watched people staring at the concrete winding river and go, wow, it's a spring. And no, it's not a real spring. That is 100% the built environment. However, um, there is a lot to suggest that this latest iteration of Disney Village, Downtown Disney, Pleasure Island, Lake Buena Vista Shopping Center, all the things that it's been, does have a lot of grounding in Florida. And aside from Florida having more freshwater springs than anywhere else on the planet. We have about 1,000. And having some issues with bottled water, which is a political thing we don't need to get into. And you'll notice that the water bottling plant at Disney Springs is not a real water bottling plant. If you go into Jock Lindsey's Hangar Bar, it combines two of my very favorite things on the planet, and that is Indiana Jones and Florida. And it takes Indiana Jones, well, his pilot, Jock Lindsey, to the Everglades. Now, when most people think of the Everglades, they think about the lower third of Florida, but the reality is the Everglades start by Disney World. They have their headwaters essentially at SeaWorld's front gate, and they used to spread out in this big V, like an inverted V down to the southern edges of Florida. And if you go into Jock Lindsey's Hangar Bar and you read some of the backstory, Jock Lindsey, who is Indy's pilot, had to crash land near essentially the Everglades in Florida, and they have these drinks that are all tied to Florida history, like the Fountain of Youth, which I joke that every county in Florida has their own Fountain of Youth. The big joke, of course, is that Ponce de Leon was searching for the Fountain of Youth, which was not true at all. But they have, obviously they do a lot of Disney things, like they have, mine car meatballs and all that, but they have an orange Pilsner, which goes back to Florida's orange citrus industry, the Fountain of Youth drink. Even some of the things that they serve there, like the Reggie's Revenge. Now that has vodka made with Florida cane sugar. They have snake bite bao buns, which is a nice marriage of Harrison Ford or Indiana Jones's distaste for snakes and a lot of the snake lore in Florida history and culture. So I really like the way they've managed to weave in this incredible movie into Florida history and culture and environment. Disney Springs and mostly Jock Lindsey.
I mean, who doesn't love Indiana Jones themes?
I have a little
Anything.
crush on Harrison Ford. A little more.
It is a great place, but I love how you tied it back to Floridian culture too, because it's something that you wouldn't even think. Yeah, go ahead.
And most people don't know this, and I'm always excited to share it with Disney people. Walt's parents were the first recorded marriage in Lake County, Florida, which is not that far from Walt Disney World. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that when they moved away, we know that his aunt did not. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that it's really possible Walt and Roy would spend their boyhood summers banging around what is now Ocala National Forest, because that's where his aunt lived. It wasn't the forest yet. So his childhood probably involved a lot of swimming in those springs. And obviously as far as I know, there were no secret plans to develop a Disney spring, but it is a nice way of tying the Walt Disney legacy to Florida's environment. Like, he didn't fly over Florida on accident. He knew what was there.
That is very cool. I'll throw one more out there that brings in some authenticity. I didn't write this down because I didn't prepare this answer, but I'm going to give you a rough answer for this. So I'm pretty sure it's the early 1900s. I believe Disney Springs has a date on it sometime in the first 10 or 20 years of the 20th century, 1900, 1910, somewhere around there. And I had the chance to interview on the show Imagineer Theron Skis, who's one of the key designers for Disney Springs. And the bricks that are used in Disney Springs, or at least some of the bricks used for Disney Springs, were repurposed from a college that was abandoned that had bricks made in that same time period. So the bricks that you are experiencing at Disney Springs are actual bricks built in the same time period in Florida that are there. So it really
do you know what the stamp is on the brick by any chance?
I don't remember. I think it's 1910, but I have to. This was like 3 years ago. I interviewed him about this, so I'm going back 3 years in my memory.
You can tell real bricks if you look at them, and you can't look straight down. You have to kind of look at them at an angle. You can see 3 fingerprints, either 2 fingers on one side and a thumb on the other, and it's where the gloves hold the bricks out, and you can actually see them in really, really old bricks. Now, I would imagine the bricks there were probably flipped in such a manner because they do tend to get very uneven. So
That's we're really going down the
I
into
can go
deep
down a
research
Florida
here.
rabbit hole. How much
Yeah.
time you got?
Oh, we got a little bit of time. We can
Okay.
always go more. We'll have to maybe this if it's a big enough topic, we could always just talk about the Florida history itself, and how that ties to Disney.
Boy, do I have stories for you. But
This
anyway,
is
I'm
this is
sorry.
why you're on the show, Kathy.
Kathy
Your deep
majored in Florida
expertise,
studies. I don't know if
I
if you
have a
knew that.
master's degree in Florida.
and you have a
So
book about
I have
Florida.
two books about Florida,
Two books about Florida.
and one of them has a chapter about Disney.
I love it.
But I'll wait for the next question to talk about that.
And we're gonna have to plug that book for you as well, just so
I
that
will
people
allow
know
it.
where to get it. Awesome. I am going to jump to. This is a hard choice. Okay, let's go to. All right, I'm going to go to Animal Kingdom. This is actually not too far, and you would expect me to prepare a lot about Harambe, but knowing that was a stereotypical thing for me to do, I instead prepared my research about Asia. So Kathy covered Maharaja Jungle Trek. I'm going to tap out a little bit or go to a slightly higher point of view to talk about Anandapur, which is broadly the section of Animal Kingdom that incorporates mostly Kali River Rapids, Maharaja Jungle Trek, but then a little bit of Expedition Everest is still considered kind of part of Anandapur, but its own town village in that jurisdiction known as Sirkazong. This is getting very specific about the setting, but what's interesting about Anandapur is that it is Sanskrit for place of all delight, and they chose Sanskrit as the language, the local language for Anandapur, because while that local language is not really spoken much anymore, it influenced the languages of several countries around that region. And the Imagineers, and much like they did for Harambe in Africa, right? They didn't want to focus on those major cities in Africa. They wanted to go more to places where there would be more interaction between the environment and the urban development happening there. So they avoided the modernized populations of China, Japan, or Korea that do have these strict borders created between humans and animals, and instead went to places where more of those ancient lifestyles can interact with the modernization and the endangered habitats that are there to can create these really interesting situations that tie into that conservation message and leave you feeling a sense of choice. And every attraction that you see at Animal Kingdom or experience at Animal Kingdom does present that conflicting situation and the dominance of nature and helping to reinforce the need for conservation. It was also felt by the Imagineers that Nepal and India and Thailand and Indonesia, at least at the time when it was built in the late 90s, had relatively little exposure in the Western world. So they thought it would create this more, evocative setting to go and experience it. So you will see some of those influences throughout Anandapur. And what I found really interesting was that as you travel from Asia, from Anandapur towards Harambe, you are also going on a bit of a global journey as well, because then you're going to pass by the caravan stage. And the caravan stage is not meant to represent the same part of the world as Anandapur. I'm giving kind of two answers here, but it's something that you might find on the Taklamakan deserts of Asia, which is along that Silk Road. So places in northern India or southern Russia or Kazakhstan or Turkmenistan or Tibet. And there's even these little details of like the travelers laying out their rugs to dry on the roof of the building. And while I could go into more detail, and maybe this might be a separate answer talking about Expedition Everest itself, because that represents a different region of that area of the world. I just love some of those details that you'll see in Anandapur. And one of my favorite aspects of it is if you look in the pavement, and I've talked about this on the show before, I think I've mentioned it in an article for WDW Magazine as well. They wanted to draw in the mode of transportation that ties to that culture as well. So you're going to see a lot of bike paths along the concrete as you're wandering through Anandapur and footprints, and it gives you the impression that the the locals there do primarily use bikes to get around or get around on foot, and that changes as you get into the mountainous regions of Circazong. But that also just adds to that story driven environment that's there. Of course, the animals that are represented there are animals you're going to find in those countries of the world. But I always love wandering around there between the music that you hear and the architecture that you see. They all draw from these different places, but roughly around that part of Southeast Asia. So it is a part of the world that you don't get to see represented a lot, and it's just, to Kathy's point, a great reason why Animal Kingdom is such a fantastic place to visit, and is just riddled with such cool Imagineering details. So
Yeah,
um,
sorry.
yeah,
I've
jump in, jump in.
kind of reached the point in my life where it's hard for me to go to Disney with somebody who doesn't have an annual pass because I don't want to rush. Like I have cousins, and if they come down, one of them in particular would pull out the map and would have to plot the day. And I'm like, no, we need to, you're not getting the full Disney. You have to slow down. And of course, you can't slow down when you only have a 1 day ticket or a park hopper and you have to do all the things. I think some of the details you're mentioning, if people are listening and they don't go to Disney whenever they want, as I can, which sounds like a weird brag, but it is my job. Um, if you can't go whenever you want and you can't really afford to slow down there, it's so sad to me that so much of the thought into representing these cultures and these cultural mores are really lost on a lot of people. And I wonder sometimes if the Imagineers ever shake their fist at the sky and curse what they've created and how popular it is that it's so crowded, people don't slow down and notice these beautiful details.
Yeah, I think there might be some cases where that's true, but I also know that most of the Imagineers I've spoken to develop that attention to detail so that the active observer can see the authenticity, and the passive observer can still feel connected to the story. So I think for folks like us, we want to understand the complexity and the development of these areas and how they contribute to the story. It's someone who's going there for the first time, it might have gone completely over their heads. But the fact that they were able to play into it without stopping to think about it shows how thought out the story was, that they could just go there and believe it. That's not a jarring experience. Even the clearest example of that is transitions from one place to the next. If you don't have, you're obviously going to know you're going from one land to another, but if you're seeing a point of delineation, other than a landmark like a bridge or something like that, but if you're sensing a point of delineation, like it's a very stark contrast from one land to the next, then you're not able to really just enjoy the experience and be immersed into it. But uh, if they do present you with a very seamless transition, it just goes over your head. You don't even think about it. You're going from one place to the next. So it's that sort of level of detail and authenticity that the passive person who's coming here only once and wants to have that traditional Disney experience can still have it, and still play a part in that story that the Imagineers laid. So
That's one
it
of the
works
reasons
both
I like
ways.
reading your stuff is that even you make points about things like that that I hope our readers can take the time to look for when they're in the parks. You are very good, like especially when you talk about transitions. I remember one article you wrote specifically talking about that. It really stuck with me. So,
I'm glad.
And
That's good
I
to
think
hear.
the casual guest who might be there on a once in every decade or once in a lifetime trip is not going to notice everything. But I think, in times of pause, there are small things you will notice. And I remember for an article years ago talking to a Mexican American content creator named Uriel Diaz, about the Remember Me exhibit in the Mexico Pavilion. And he was talking about how important that representation was for him to take his mother, who was Mexican born, to see her culture on display. And he said, I recognize that most people run straight past it to get their margarita, but just knowing that like each day, one or two people might stop and learn something new about his culture meant the world to him. So like even if it's only a couple people noticing certain details and really connecting with other cultures, I still think that's a win at Disney.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim, why don't we go to you for the next one?
Sure, I'll take us back to World Showcase. So I was thinking through which countries that are represented of the 11 pavilions that I've been to. Obviously, I have been to the US. I live here.
Welcome back to Imagination Central. Before you exit this episode, remember to follow Imagination Skyway on social media and share the show with anyone who might enjoy listening to our program. For ad-free episodes and bonus content, create a free account or sign up for a premium subscription at patreon.com/imaginationskyway. When you're ready for your next vacation, remember that listeners of Imagination Skyway can get rewarded for booking a trip to Disney in 2025 through KMV Travel. Simply fill out the form at kmvtravel.com/skyway and make sure that you select Imagination Skyway under the How Did You Hear About Us question to be eligible for a special gift from the team. Terms and conditions apply. As you disembark, please remember to remain fully seated until the podcast comes to a complete stop, then gather your belongings and watch your head and step as you exit. Thank you so much for joining me aboard Imagination Skyway, and remember, if we can dream it, we can do it.